Welcome, future teacher, to our Praxis 5017 math workbook lesson. In this lesson, we are going to walk down 5 different content categories in order to help you get totally prepared for your upcoming Praxis 5017 math section. So part 1, we're going to start with core instructional models. Then we're going to move on to assessment strategies. We're going to then proceed into numbers and operations and how to effectively teach algebraic thinking. And we're going to conclude with effective instructional strategies that you'll want to know for your exam regarding teaching geometry, measurement, and data. So without further ado, let's begin. My name is Elliot, and it's my job to help you make passing simple. Part 1 is all about the core instructional models. Make sure that you have your workbook open, you are watching this and completing this alongside with me. All right, so we're starting off with some vocabulary, and the way this is going to work is that I will read the definitions on the right side, and then what we'll want to do is we will want to fill in the blanks on the left side. So let's begin. Students use physical objects, these are manipulatives, think here like blocks or tiles, in order to model problems. This is the doing stage. So we can think about all the different things that we can provide students in order to provide them with a more concrete way of learning math. So that right there is just what I mentioned. That's a concrete instructional strategy. All right, now moving on, we have students use drawings or diagrams to complete problems. This is the seeing stage. So think here we have number lines, bar models, circle diagrams, tally marks, and so many more. Now, once we move from the concrete stage, we go to representational. All right, and then from representational, we move on to the next step. And here, students only use the numbers and the symbols. This is where we actually teach what the different denominator versus the numerator means. And we use the actual symbols. For example, I'm using the greater than, less than sign right there. And so again, first step is concrete, then we move to representational, and then finally we teach our students in the abstract manner. Abstract. There we go. All right, let's move on down to this active recall section, and let's read this together. When you identify a student misconception, your goal is to fix the underlying thinking, not just reteach the rule. What is the test favored way to do this? All right, so take a moment here, think while you're completing your workbook, see if you can do it right before me and then check your understanding. All right, so remember, correcting misconceptions is not about telling the student that they're wrong. Of course, it's about confronting the faulty thinking and using a model to provide them with that structure. So the best answers will involve asking probing questions or using models, again, such as concrete models or concrete modeling, as well as manipulatives. And when you see the word manipulatives on test day, again, remember that might be providing the scaffold of blocks or tiles or something that oftentimes the students can actually get their hands on in order to better learn and oftentimes visually or kinesthetically learn the math skill that we're teaching. All right, so next up, let's go to a practice question. Here we go. A teacher observes a student is consistently making errors in adding fractions with unlike denominators. So here we have 1/2 plus 1/4 equals, they said 2/6. So, and of course we can see how they got that. They added the numerators 1 and 1 to equal 2, as well as the denominators 2 and 4, which they found, of course, to be 6. All right, now let's keep reading. The student is applying a whole number rule, so adds the top and the bottom, just like what we just mentioned. According to the CRA instructional sequence, what is the most appropriate next step? Now, in case you haven't read the study guide yet or watched the visual study guide where I presented about this, do you remember what CRA stands for? Well, that's just what we went over right before this, and that is the concrete representational abstract sequencing. All right, so according to this instructional sequence, what's the most appropriate step? Take a moment and read the 4 answer options, and then come back when you have selected one. All right, let's read this together. First up, review the abstract algorithm for finding a common denominator. Second, provide a worksheet with more abstract practice problems. Third, have the student use fraction tiles or draw bar models. And fourth, tell the student to memorize the rule about denominators. Now, the student is struggling with the abstract concept. That's what we call the algorithm. And according to this CRA sequencing that the test often favors, when a student fails at the abstract level, the teacher should regress to a more concrete. This is what we're talking about, where you go from concrete to representational to abstract. And if once you get to the abstract and the student doesn't understand, then go back to representational or concrete in order to reinforce the concept. The best solution for that reason is when I see fraction tiles or bar models, that's what I would select. All right, now let's go on to part 2. If you're following along, you're doing great. Remember, each moment and minute that you keep on studying with these preparation materials, videos, lessons, workbooks, just the closer that you are to passing on test day. So part 2, all about assessment strategies. Let's get into this. This section is going to cover how and why and when to use different types of assessments. So it means that you're going to need to know each of the types. So what we're going to do here is I'll start by reading the definition. And if you think you know the answer, make sure to write in the term. So the first one reads, an assessment given before instruction to see what assessment need to know and to diagnose learning gaps. Do you recall what that is? Okay, so an assessment given before instruction. That would be what's called a diagnostic assessment. So I'm just going to write diagnostic. And remember that this is assessment. Now, each of these are assessments, so I'm not going to write the word assessment. Next up, informal low stakes checks during instruction to guide. So the examples that we often use in the classroom include exit tickets, and we might ask a question verbally to the students. We might be sitting on the chair in front of the whiteboard. The students are sitting on the rugs or at their desk, and we can ask for a thumbs up or thumbs down. I really like that approach for some quick checks because it doesn't require the students to raise their hand and then say out loud, and that can oftentimes go into a tangent. And so just a quick thumbs up or thumbs down check, as well as a quick write-up. What would this type of assessment be? This is a formative assessment. Here we go, formative. Let's keep on going. Next up, our next type of assessment. This is a formal high-stakes assessment that we as teachers provide to our students at the end of a unit, chapter, or semester or year. So think here the final research paper or the final exam. So what would that be called? Those are the summative assessments. All right, next up, let's go on to this assessment, which compares a student's performance to a fixed standard or mastery level, for example, 80% on the test, or simply passed the driving test. These are what's known as criterion referenced exams. All right, so criterion referenced not exams, but assessments. All right, criterion referenced assessments. And lastly, we have that we compare students' performance to other students. This is a norm group, not to give it away, but we're just trying to provide you with the tools that will help you to remember. All right, so norm group, or scored based off the percentile of other students. This is what's called a norm referenced assessment. Norm referenced assessment. All right, next up we have a practice test question. Let's take a moment and read this. Here we go. After a 10-minute mini lesson on algebraic expressions, a teacher wants to quickly check if students grasped the main concept before moving to a group activity. What is the most effective assessment strategy for this purpose? Take a moment here to read the 4 answer options and then come back when you're ready. All right, now this scenario describes a formative assessment. Remember, formative assessment, that's a quick check for understanding during the lesson. An exit ticket, which I see right here, is the only formative strategy listed. So projects A and C and D are summative or just too time-consuming for a mid-lesson check. For that reason, I would select answer option B. All right, let's move on to part number 3, all about numbers and operations. All right, now this section covers proportional reasoning and number theory. So the concepts are all about the foundations of basic algebra. Now, what the test is going to check your understanding of is that you need to know the terms and their definitions within this math context. So let's go ahead and read the definition. This one reads,